In the final, fading moments of her life, in the year 1603, the legend of Queen Elizabeth III began to unravel. For nearly half a century, she had been Gloriana, the Virgin Queen, an almost divine figure whose face, eternally youthful in portraits, was the very symbol of England itself. But as her ladies-in-waiting prepared her body for its final rest, they were confronted with a truth they had only ever whispered about. With gentle hands, they began the grim task of washing away the layers. A thick, white mask of Venetian ceruse, the lead-based paint she had worn for decades, was carefully wiped away. Beneath it was not the porcelain icon of a nation, but the ravaged face of a mortal woman. A face scarred by the very poisons she had used to preserve her image. A testament to a lifelong, secret war she had waged against a single, relentless enemy: reality. Her hygiene, a subject of rumor and myth for centuries, was not born of ignorance or laziness. It was a calculated and ultimately self-destructive political strategy. Every skipped bath, every coat of toxic paint, every drop of perfume was a deliberate act in a grand performance designed to build an immortal queen. To understand the horrifying reality of her practices, we must look beyond the throne and into the mind of a woman haunted by the fragility of power and utterly terrified of being seen as merely human. The first front in Elizabeth's war against reality was waged inside her own mouth. Her addiction to sugar was legendary. In the 16th century, sugar was not a common treat. It was a symbol of immense wealth and global power, a rare and expensive luxury imported from distant lands. Elizabeth did not just enjoy sweets, she consumed them with a passion that bordered on obsession. Her royal meals were spectacles of confectionery art. Candied violets, sugar-dusted fruits, and desserts so drenched in syrup they glistened like jewels. This was a deliberate display. Each sugary indulgence was a message to foreign ambassadors and rival courts. England was rich, powerful, and capable of affording the finest things in the world, but this sweet obsession came at a terrifying cost. In an era of primitive dental care, where teeth were cleaned with twigs and crushed eggshells, the Queen's constant sugar consumption was a recipe for disaster. Compounding the issue was her own royal toothpaste, a bizarre mixture of sugar and herbs. She was attempting to clean the very thing that was destroying her with the agent of its destruction. Over time, her smile, once a tool of diplomatic charm, decayed into a shocking ruin. By the 1590s, foreign visitors noted with a mixture of fascination and disgust that her teeth were blackened, broken, and missing. Her breath was reportedly so foul that it made courtiers physically recoil, and her speech became difficult to understand, mumbled through a mouth of rot. Yet, she was terrified of the pain of having them removed. In a moment of almost surreal, courtly devotion, one of her counsellors, Richard Carey, volunteered to have one of his own healthy teeth pulled in front of her, enduring agonizing public pain just to prove that the procedure was survivable. Perhaps the strangest part of this dental tragedy, however, was how it became a symbol of status. Rather than mocking her decaying smile, the noble women of her court began to emulate it. They would deliberately blacken their own teeth with soot and charcoal to match the Queen's look. In the twisted logic of the Elizabethan court, even tooth decay became a fashion statement. A black smile did not signify poor health. It signified that you were wealthy enough to afford the sugar that caused it. The second battle in her war was against the very element of life itself, water. The infamous quote, "I bathe once a month, whether I need it or not," though likely apocryphal, perfectly captures the Tudor mindset. In the 16th century, water was seen as a dangerous, corrupting force. It was believed that immersing the body in water could open the pores to disease, allowing in the deadly miasmas, or bad air that were blamed for spreading the plague. To take a full bath was not seen as a healthy act of cleansing, but as a risky, almost reckless invitation to illness. So, Elizabeth avoided it. Her concept of cleanliness was not one of sanitation, but of insulation. Instead of washing, she would change her linen undergarments or shifts multiple times a day. It was believed that the clean white linen would absorb sweat, dirt, and toxins from the skin, effectively dry cleaning the body. When she did wish to freshen up, her handmaidens would gently dab her skin with rosewater or scented vinegar in a slow, careful ritual. Her body was treated not as a living organism to be scrubbed, but as a sacred relic to be preserved. A full bath was a monumental undertaking, requiring a giant wooden tub to be dragged into her chambers and dozens of buckets of water to be heated and poured. It was a rare ceremony, not a daily habit. Yet, to the world, she was the epitome of cleanliness, always appearing in immaculate gowns of silk and velvet, and smelling of the finest flowers and spices. It was a carefully constructed illusion, a victory of appearance over reality. The most famous and destructive battle in Elizabeth's war was waged upon her own face. Her iconic image, a face as white as porcelain, smooth as marble, was a myth. It was a mask, meticulously painted on every single day, not for vanity, but for political survival. In her time, pale skin was a sign of nobility. It meant you did not have to labor in the sun. Elizabeth took this to a terrifying extreme. She used her makeup to create a version of herself that could not age, weaken, or be questioned. Her weapon of choice was a cosmetic called Venetian ceruse, a deadly mixture of white lead and vinegar. It created a flawlessly smooth white complexion, hiding every blemish, wrinkle, and scar, including the ones from her near-fatal bout of smallpox. But this mask of perfection was eating her alive. The lead soaked into her skin, causing long-term nerve damage, hair loss, and chronic skin decay. As her real face was slowly destroyed beneath the paint, she simply applied more, thicker and thicker, until her appearance became a frozen, lifeless veneer. For her lips and cheeks, she used a bright red pigment made from cinnabar, which contains mercury, one of the most toxic substances on Earth. As the years went on, she began to exhibit the classic signs of mercury poisoning: memory loss, irritability, and depression. She was slowly poisoning herself to death in her quest for an immortal image. Her face did not belong to her, it belonged to England. Her image was her power, a tool to project an aura of ageless, almost divine authority. She famously forbade painters from depicting her realistically, forcing them to use official face patterns copied from younger portraits. No matter how old she became, her image remained frozen in time, youthful, perfect, eternal. In her final years, people whispered that her makeup was so thick it would crack if she smiled too widely. She had banned all mirrors from her private rooms, refusing to confront the ravaged reality that lay beneath the mask. She had become a prisoner of her own illusion, willing to destroy her body to preserve the legend. To truly understand Queen Elizabeth's hygiene, one must understand her deepest fear: losing control. Every perfumed glove, every powdered wig, every drop of scented water was part of a defense mechanism, a fortress of fragrance and artifice built to hide her vulnerabilities. She surrounded herself with strong, sweet smells, carrying pomanders, small, ornate balls filled with herbs, to shield her nose from the foul odors of the world. These were not just accessories. They were declarations of her separation from the common, smelly reality of human existence. Her hair was rarely washed, but instead stiffened with sugar water and egg whites. As she aged and began to lose her hair, likely a side effect of the lead and mercury poisoning, she turned to a vast collection of auburn wigs to maintain her iconic look. Underneath all the powder and perfume, her body was decaying. But to wash it, to truly clean it, would be to wipe away the mask, to dissolve the illusion, and to admit that she was, after all, only human. And Elizabeth had spent a lifetime convincing the world, and perhaps herself, that she was something more. Finally, the grandest illusion of all was the very environment in which she lived. From the outside, her palaces at Whitehall, Hampton Court and Greenwich were marvels of Tudor architecture, symbols of heaven on earth. Inside, however, they were a sanitary nightmare. There were no toilets, no sinks, and no plumbing. Behind the golden ceilings and velvet tapestries, the Queen and her 1,000-strong court lived in a world that perpetually smelled like a sewer. Her private toilet was an elegant velvet-covered chair called a close stool, which concealed a ceramic pot. This pot had to be emptied by hand by a high-ranking and trusted courtier, the groom of the stool. This position was one of the most coveted in the kingdom, for this man was not a janitor. He was the queen's closest confidant, privy to her most private moments and secrets. To be close to the queen's waist was to be close to power. The rest of the palace was far more disgusting. Chamber pots were used by everyone, and their contents were simply dumped into cesspits beneath the floors or flung into the gardens and the River Thames. The task of cleaning this filth fell to men called gong farmers, who worked at night, hauling buckets of human waste through dark hallways. The stench was inescapable. To combat it, the palace burned herbs and covered the floors with rushes, but these were rarely changed, creating a hidden layer of dirt, food scraps, and rot. The queen herself had to move her court from palace to palace, not just for political reasons, but to literally escape the overwhelming smell of their own accumulated waste. This was the ultimate paradox of Elizabeth's reign. A queen obsessed with a flawless public image, living in a world of magnificent, gilded squalor, forever at war with the foul, undeniable reality of her own kingdom.